President-elect Obama enjoys his Hawaiian vacation, his advisors are working overtime on a massive government spending plan that gets bigger by the day.
There's going to be real significant investment, whether it's $600 billion or more or $700 billion. The clear notion is it's a number no one thought about a year ago.
Sources on Capitol Hill say the stimulus package could grow to $850 billion or more. That's about double the cost in today's dollars of the interstate highway system. It's more than the cost so far of the Iraq War, even more than the entire Vietnam War. The top priority in the Obama plan is big projects that create jobs quickly, rebuilding infrastructure, refurbishing schools, and investing in mass transit, healthcare technology, and green energy.
There's a big void in our economy, and only government can fill it.
With consumers not spending and more businesses laying off workers, some economists say there's simply no alternative.
Government is the difference between a bad recession and a very bad depression.
Zandy says unlike the banks that got more than $300 billion in bailout funds and won't say where most of it went, the Obama spending plan needs to explain exactly where the money is going.
$790 billion. The compromise bill is less than what either house passed. It's roughly two-thirds spending to create jobs and help the states, and one-third tax cuts for lower and middle-income earners. The president praised it, and Democrats say it will help turn around the floundering economy.
So what's in here is to grow the economy, bring more revenues to the Treasury so that we can do our work for the American people in a fiscally sound way.
The bill could become law within days. Many economists remain skeptical about whether it will work. And the president himself says that the success of the bill will be measured by the number of jobs it creates.
And what makes this recovery plan so important is not just that it will create or save 3.5 million jobs over the next 2 years, including 60,000 plus here in Colorado. It's that we're putting Americans to work, doing the work that America needs done. Work that will bring real and lasting change for generations to come. That's why I've asked Vice President Biden to lead a tough, unprecedented oversight effort, because nobody messes with Joe.
With so much on his plate, the president has made his number two the stimulus cop. The assignment, to see that the $787 billion in stimulus money is spent wisely.
It's an investment that will save taxpayers over $1 billion by slashing energy costs in our federal buildings by 25%. Save working families hundreds of dollars a year on their energy bills by weatherizing over 1 million homes. And it's an investment that takes the important first step towards a national transmission superhighway that will connect our cities to the windy plains of the Dakotas and the sunny deserts of the Southwest. It's the product of broad consultation and the recipient of broad support from business leaders, unions, public interest groups, from the Chamber of Commerce and the National Association of Manufacturers, as well as the AFL-CIO, from Democrats and Republicans, mayors, as well as governors.
Our president, our new president, spoke from the steps of the Capitol. He gave a message of hope and a new direction for our country. He talked about creating jobs, about harnessing the sun and wind and renewable energy resources.
Can you honestly say that every program in this plan is solely to stimulate the economy?
Yes, I do.
How does $335 million in STD prevention stimulate the economy?
I'll tell you how. I'm a big believer in prevention.
So in layman's terms, when will I see an effect? When and how?
Well, when you will see an effect is the confidence that will spring forth when we pass this legislation. We have initiatives that will immediately create jobs, cut taxes, help the states meet their responsibilities of public safety, education, healthcare, and the rest. So again, the impact is immediate.
Will you have to raise taxes eventually to pay for all this spending? And if so, how do you sell that to the American who's hurting financially?
We're hoping that this will have a turnaround in the economy.
Can we hold Democrats, can we hold you responsible if this does not stop the bleeding and things in fact get worse?
Well, we are definitely stepping up to the plate to say we will be accountable. That's why the choices that we made had to be very carefully made, because we had to deliver on meeting the needs of the American people.
Bottom line, says the president,
that it will save or create up to 4 million jobs.
but that's very hard to tell because it's very hard to put a number, and those are uncertain figures.
It will save or create more than 3.5 million jobs over the next 2 years, ignite spending by businesses and consumers alike, and lay a new foundation for our lasting economic growth and prosperity. This is a major milestone on our road to recovery. That's why our goal must be to spend these precious dollars with unprecedented accountability, responsibility, and transparency. I've tasked my cabinet and staff to set up the kind of management, oversight, and disclosure that will help ensure that, and I will challenge state and local governments to do the same. The work of building wind turbines and solar panels, and the smart grid necessary to transport the clean energy they create, and laying broadband internet lines to connect rural homes, schools, and businesses to the information superhighway. The work of repairing our crumbling roads and bridges, and our dangerously deficient dams and levees.
In their new report, 100 days, 100 projects, but how much of this is real and how much is hype? Green improvements to this public housing in Washington, D.C. is project number one. Using $27 million, the report says, the Regency House installed solar panels, a green roof, a rainwater collection system, energy-efficient lighting, as well as water-conserving toilets, shower heads, and faucets. But that's not true. The stimulus paid for only 2 of those 7 items. The other 5 were installed before the stimulus bill was even introduced in Congress. And $27 million? That's the total amount the D.C. Housing Authority is getting for all their projects. For this one?
$44,000 for the roof solar panels is the only thing that's been paid for thus far.
The White House admitted the entry is not accurate, though it remains on the whitehouse.gov website.
In mistaking that one, it took a series of different projects in a cut and paste into one.
Critics have long said the administration overstates the impact of the stimulus.
You'll see the effects begin almost immediately.
In Las Vegas this week, President Obama played this card.
The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act has saved or created nearly 150,000 jobs.
But that's a number based on theory, not fact, and some critics say it's overstated.
It's simply an implausible statement to say that some 150,000 jobs were created by direct spending, indirect spending, and so forth.
Without question, the stimulus is having an effect on some job creation, and of course, some of the reports, some of the projects listed in here are projects that are going to happen, but not yet one penny has been spent. One other bit of stimulus news, Diane, the administration in its first quarterly report on the stimulus said $46 billion had been spent. They had to revise that figure. It's now $36 billion, which means less than 5% of the stimulus has already gone out the door.
Thanks. Earlier today, the Vice President made a stop in Lake County to talk about the effects of the Economic Recovery Act. In Claremont, Mr. Biden told workers at a $20 million road construction project that their jobs were created by the president's $787 billion stimulus package. This widening project on Highway 27 will create 20 to 50 jobs.
6 months after the stimulus was passed, less than 10% of the money has actually been spent, and the unemployment rate is still climbing. That's prompted calls from some Democrats for yet another stimulus and complaints that some of the money that's already gone out the door has been wasted.
Signs of progress. Stimulus-funded road construction is underway across the country. But what about the signs? At most projects, signs tout the stimulus with the spiffy American Reinvestment and Recovery Act logo designed by the White House. To some, it's a waste of taxpayer money.
The folks who support the stimulus package, basically this administration, want to get out there and blow their own horn with taxpayers' money.
These signs are much pricier. $500 apiece in Maryland and New Hampshire, $1,700 in Georgia, $2,000 per sign in Pennsylvania and New York, and $3,000 per project in New Jersey. New York alone is spending about $1 million on signs.
That's enough to fill a lot of potholes. For the price of one $2,000 sign, you could repair about 40 potholes.
Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood says the signs are worth every penny.
Signs tell a story, and the story that's being told is that hard-earned taxpayer dollars are being spent to rebuild roads, resurface bridges.
Some states disagree. Texas, Florida, and Virginia have said no to signs, putting the money into projects instead. In most states, signs are made before projects are even started. New Jersey, for example, is getting $650 million of stimulus money for roads and has spent only $225,000 so far, $12,000 of that on signs. Ultimately, the signs will represent a tiny fraction of the money spent on construction, but for now, the signs seem easier to create than jobs.
All told, several $1 million will be spent on those signs. But, Diane, we've recently learned of an even costlier stimulus project that is raising some eyebrows. The administration has announced it is revamping the stimulus website at a cost of $18 million.
Proud that weatherization is a seed to spur new technology into renewable energy, and that the dollars are starting to circulate.
Just the energy investments that we have put in, the federal government has put in, has brought $100 billion of private capital off the sideline that wasn't being invested before this into the game.
As for how many jobs have actually been created as a result of the stimulus package, the numbers vary widely depending on the formula used. But under weatherization, the local organizer, Southern New Hampshire Services, says that it has hired 7 new full-time employees and close to 70 subcontractors thanks to the federal funding. Reporting live, Josh McKelvin, WMUR News.
Washington today, an effort in Congress to investigate an effort by the Obama administration to create green jobs, but this one went bad. A solar energy company championed by the president himself. It received $500 million in government loans, and then it went bankrupt last month. Well, today Republicans were looking for some answers here. The story from our senior investigative correspondent, Lisa Myers.
The president visited the company Solyndra last year, hailing it as a stimulus success story.
The true engine of economic growth will always be companies like Solyndra.
Today, the company is bankrupt. 1,100 workers laid off. Taxpayers stand to lose as much as $500 million.
I think everyone must agree that there's some scandal involved in this. Should someone be fired?
House Republicans today hammered the White House, revealing emails which suggest the administration was in a hurry to provide taxpayer money, despite red flags about the company's viability.
Yeah, there was pressure, but it was pressure applied in pushing this thing out the door.
Just days before the deal approved, a staffer warns that one model shows the project runs out of cash in September 2011, which it did. Another questioned the government's assumptions, but said given the time pressure we are under to sign off on Solyndra, we don't have time to change the model. Why the rush? Emails showed that the White House wanted the vice president to announce a final deal the next week, which he did. Still, administration officials insist everything was handled properly.
Extensive due diligence was done across multiple years.
They blame the company's collapse on unforeseeable market conditions, which caused solar prices to plummet this year.
At the end of the day, the taxpayer loses big time. I mean, it stinks to high heaven.
Still, the White House argues this was a necessary risk for the U.S. to compete in a high-tech global economy. Lisa Myers, NBC News, Washington.
Was to fix the economy. No problem there is, we already did it. I said it once, I'll say it again. The stimulus is working. Now, I know that might be tough to swallow if you're unemployed, but look at me. The stimulus is working. Right now, there are thousands of new jobs being created every day across America. Foreclosure lawyers and repo men, temps and bankruptcy specialists. So don't tell me no one's hiring. The quality of the workforce is improving too. If you drive behind a Home Depot right now to find a bunch of guys back there ready to help you put in a new deck, you're going to find fellows with master's degrees, former professors, and accountants. I mean, it's amazing, and it makes me proud to be an American.
Through Medicaid, because of that act. Every senior's getting attacked, got a $250 payment, one check. Everybody draws a paycheck, got a pay cut averaging $60 a month, over $5,000 a year. Ladies and gentlemen, the other thing is, here in Pennsylvania, without that Recovery Act, the governor and the state legislature would have laid off another 10,000 plus people. 135,000 school teachers, over 5,000 cops would not be in a classroom around the street today, but for that Recovery Act.
You are in charge of monitoring this stimulus, $800 billion stimulus. 100 days after it was signed, the president said 150,000 jobs have been created or saved. Can you explain where that number comes from?
Yes, look, there's an econometric model that economists have been using for decades to correlate the economic circumstances of the nation with the creation of jobs. It is a model no one has questioned. It's a model the Council of Economic Advisors used to come up with that 150,000 jobs. But in fact, and by the way, I think we're going to create another 600,000 jobs in the next 100 days, because now this thing is beginning to roll out. We actually have let these contracts, the governors who have money for road contracts and so on, they're now just putting spades in the ground, just hiring people. And so I don't know anybody who's argued with the model that we've used, but the key here for us is not whether or not we're going to argue about how many jobs there are out there. It's whether or not are we in fact producing employment for people. And it's
that's an important point. You say people aren't arguing about that. In fact, they are. I mean, you're suggesting that this is an accepted model. Your own economic advisor said this on Tuesday. Jared Bernstein, Biden's economic advisor, said in an interview that the president's citation of saving or creating 150,000 jobs is an estimate based partly on what the economy would look like in the absence of the stimulus package. But Bernstein said he could not break down how many of those jobs were created versus saved. That's a division we're not able to make at a level of accuracy we're comfortable with, he said. And now you're talking about another 600,000 jobs. Should Americans just accept that level of progress?
No, they shouldn't. Well, look, whether this was 147,000 jobs or 158,000 jobs is not the relevant point. Look,
the point of the stimulus was it would stop the unemployment picture from getting worse, right? Wasn't that the claim?
And it has.
It has? Well,
it's not getting worse.
But here's the reality, and that is that when this report was issued by your economic advisor and Dr. Romer from the White House, the assertion was that you could keep unemployment at 8% and then it would go down after that. In fact, it's now at 9.4%.
Look,
was it oversold?
No. What we did is we took the econometric models that were used by businesses as well as academics at the time. No one realized how bad the economy was. The projections, in fact, turned out to be worse. But it wasn't. We took the mainstream model as to what we thought and everyone else thought the unemployment rate would be. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think anyone can dispute the unemployment rate would be considerably higher, but for at least 150,000 jobs higher, but for this economic stimulus package.
But this package was sold on the premise that it would in fact keep unemployment at 8%. It's exceeded that with the recovery plan.
No. It wasn't sold on that. It was sold on it would create.
That's what the report said.
No, it said it would create. What would happen was it would save or create jobs. It's doing that. It is doing that. Everyone guessed wrong at the time the estimate was made about what the state of the economy was at the moment this was passed. Now, we're going to recalibrate this in terms of what we've inherited, what, in fact, is going on out there. But look, the bottom line is that jobs are being created that would not have been there before. All you've got to do is go into New York City. There's 14,000 teachers working who got their notices. Go with me up to New Flyer Bus Company up in Minnesota. Come on. I mean, it's throughout the country.
Regardless, the economy is worse off with or without this stimulus plan than this administration expected.
The economy was worse off when we made the assessment than anyone thought it was. So I think if you ask out there, look at what the these measures of confidence in the economy are. Everyone feels mildly better about where the economy is going.
One more point about the stimulus, and that is, you said when this thing was being debated, most of it would get out the door right away, $800 billion. And yet just this week, there were reports about the fact that only 6% of that money has been spent so far.
No, I don't know
Where
who
are the
said we're
projects?
going to get out $800 billion out the door in 100 days. We have over 2,000 projects approved. We have now a situation where you have people, you're going to see in the next, is this an important point? You let a contract to build a highway. It's $42 million, like I was just did one in the state of Kansas. $42 million. Now what's happened? The governor gets that approval. What's he do? He puts it out to bid, competitive bid. It took somewhere between a month and 3 months to get those bids back. Now the spades are in the ground. Now it's working. That's why we're confidently going to predict that we will increase fourfold and now $140 billion has been obligated now. But obligation requires then the states to go forward and get the contracting done according to the rules that they have within the state for competitive bidding.
Using stimulus money. So
you think something got by Joe?
well, I'm not really sure, but we did a little digging, and in fact our local newspaper did some digging as well, and they called the White House. And first of all, they said, okay, White House, you're claiming that you've got all this transparency, Joe Biden's hunting out for every dime that's out there. How is it that you can have jobs being shown that you're creating in districts that don't exist? And the first thing the White House said is, we're not certifying the accuracy of the information. So first in January, they were going to be the most transparent administration ever. Now, 10 months later, billions and billions of dollars of borrowed money is going out the door. Nobody knows what it was spent on. They claim to create jobs in districts that don't exist, and the best they can say is, we're not certifying the accuracy of the information.
But I thought nobody gets past Joe.
Well, we're going to get to that because I think we've got some enlightenment we're going to shine on it. So then they actually followed up and they asked the White House. They said, well, how is it, if you're not certifying the accuracy, how is it, though, that somebody can show a district that doesn't exist on your website as creating jobs? And the White House spokesperson's answer was, who knows, man? Who really knows? That's his direct quote. That's the best the White House could come up with, as the American people are saying, where's the job? Where are the jobs? And what are y'all doing with all of this money? And their answer is, who knows, man? Who really knows?
Look, we did almost $1 trillion in stimulus spending. And you all at that time said, oh, unemployment won't go above 8%. GDP will be a lot higher than it is now. And it isn't. And so now we need another leap with the jobs bill.
No, look, here's the deal. Nobody can look you in the eye and tell you that the Recovery Act and that stimulus did not create jobs and did not do very good things for the economy.
Are you surprised how intimately involved he is in the whole process? Quite frankly, yes. I said, Mr. President, neither of us has time for this conversation, especially you, because we really, we understand each other. We know where we need to go. Can you tell us anything he said to you? Like, get cracking? No, never that. We were always cracking. But it was really a moment for us to have an appreciation that in just a little while, maybe a couple of days, we will have passed legislation that will take the country in a new direction, which will begin us down the road of recovery. Because what is in the details are how we will create those jobs, how we do it in a transparent way for the world to see, with accountability to the public, again, to build jobs, build confidence, and stabilize the economy. But this bill will create 3.5 million jobs, and 3 weeks ago, we weren't even on this path. I always say to my members, respect it for what it does, rather than judge it for what it does not do, because this does an enormous amount. And in order for it to instill the confidence into the American people, I think we have to believe in what we are doing, and we believe in what we are doing.
Yesterday, I traveled with Vice President Joe Biden to Saginaw, Michigan for an exclusive interview. And we asked him if Americans really got their bang from the buck from the stimulus.
Absolutely, but I don't think they realize it.
David Garth, the great political consultant, said you have to remove the smell of decay and replace it with the smell of construction. We all know what construction smells like: dirt, concrete, cement, wood. You can smell it on the streets when you walk by a construction site and you're a highway superintendent. When is that going to happen? When are the cranes going to go up? When are the highways going to be rebuilt? What happened to the true
infrastructure spending that we're supposed to see.
We never really
What
got
happened to it?
We never got it. Even if you look at the numbers initially, they were really just a little bit bigger than the big dig.
Was it all just pay off to mayors and governors? Where'd all that money go?
Well, look, some people think it was just payoff and political went to people who already had jobs for state and local governments and for the bondholders. And I've got to tell you,
to avoid shutdowns and layoffs. But it didn't go to construction projects which people could smell and see. And I think that's what bugs people. And that's why Pelosi's not popular. She's not popular because she presided over the creation of a big grab bag of stuff.
It's hard to believe that 15 years ago, when I ran for governor, part of my platform was high-speed rail. And in the 15 years, not much has happened, except for this commission, which Quentin heads. And the fact of the matter is that they have put together a proposal, which is now on the ballot as Proposition 1A. Well, one newspaper said, now is not the time because we can't afford it. I would say we can't afford not to do it. The money is 2-to-1 matched by federal and private sources. I'm very worried that if this doesn't pass, it'll be our last chance. And therefore, I hope the message goes out, not just to San Francisco, not just to the San Francisco Bay Area, but down through the Central Valley, which will benefit so much from this. This project is our future, and we should not forsake it. It is the ability to move people quickly, safely, and in an environmentally constructive way up and down our state. So I am a big supporter. I will work with the Speaker. I will try to get the monies available, Quentin, as soon as we can.
That's why we passed an unprecedented Recovery Act less than a month after I took office, and did so without any of the earmarks or pork barrels spending that's so common in Washington. Finally, somebody who's not here, but deserves a little credit, is my Vice President, Joe Biden, who is managing the stimulus process. That's Joe trying to call in. Joe is doing a great job, and but he is pretty tough when it comes to tracking the money, and so he's going to be paying attention, Doc, to make sure that it's going where it's supposed to be going.
The fortunate thing is I didn't have many larger contributors, and the only reason, I went to the big guys for the money. I was ready to prostitute myself in the manner in which I talked about it, but what happened was they said, come back when you're 40, son, and so I had to go out.
In 2010, President Obama and Vice President Biden personally appeared to break ground at 2 Michigan plants, and with good reason. The plants were getting a combined $300 million under the stimulus program to build electric car batteries. As it turns out, the companies getting all those American tax dollars are largely owned by Koreans. They bought a lot of Korean equipment and supplies, and they filled some of those sought-after jobs with Korean workers. That drew anger from local labor unions. They say these pictures taken inside the plants show Korean nationals doing hands-on work that should be done by Americans. Mark Mangione represents 1,000 labor union members in West Michigan.
I think there's a lot of anger out there, not to be confused with any sort of, prejudice against anyone from any other country. But this is American taxpayer dollars, and they should be American jobs that are created with those American taxpayer dollars.
The companies, LG Chem and Dow Kokum, wouldn't agree to interviews, but they told us the Korean workers are temporary and legal and have unique expertise with highly sophisticated equipment. But just how many there are remains a mystery. The companies won't tell us. Dow Kokum acknowledged 150 on site last December, but won't give us a grand total. LG Chem calls the union complaints baseless and says Korean nationals haven't been used to provide labor or craft work. The unions insist they've seen foreign workers doing the very jobs Americans could do. The unions wrote complaint letters to the Labor Department and the President, but got few answers. So they filed a Freedom of Information request. In it, they asked for payroll records of LG Chem contractors performing construction work. The government's response named 18 companies. At least 11 of them are Asian firms. Energy Department officials say they're confident all laws are being obeyed, but declined our interview request to talk about foreign workers on stimulus jobs.
president told Republicans he's open to the possibility of more tax cuts for small business. But when Republicans criticized tax refunds for people who don't pay taxes, sources in the meeting say the president said, quote, "I won," referring to the election and making clear he's sticking with that part of the plan.
As president, I expect to be judged and should be judged by the results of this program.
Breaking news, the May jobs report just came out and the numbers are not good. So the unemployment rate went up.
40 consecutive months of 8% unemployment or more.
Government payrolls down 13,000, construction down 28,000.
300,000 more long-term unemployed.
The U.S. saw the smallest increase in jobs in a year.
Any way you slice it, looks like last summer all over again.
Practically nothing about this report that was positive.
Well, this is Obama's economy. That's fine. Give it to me. As president, I expect to be judged and should be judged by the results of this program. Well, this is Obama's economy. That's fine. Give it to me.
We have a staggering something like 200,000 megawatts of wind energy projects waiting to be brought to fruition that can't be put up until we have more of a national electric grid, because the wind blows hardest in America where the fewest people are. So the capacity, the electrical carrying capacity in these rural areas is not so great. Well, it takes time to plan and build that. So those are the kinds of choices they're having to make in that area. We'll work through it. And keep in mind, they just got there. They're doing pretty well, I think.